Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives, the show where we interview creative professionals no matter what their genre. I'm Melanie Perry.
And I'm Julie Hyde-New.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans and followers of our show will know by now that we're part of the Creatives Group, the business club for creative professionals everywhere. Together, we help you create at your best, connect you with like-minded individuals, and therefore help you to grow your creative business. That sounds like a good idea to you and you'd like to find out more. We'd love to hear about you and your creative business after the show. But as I said earlier on, this is On the Couch. Who have we got on the couch today, Julie?
This On the Couch chat is for all the video game enthusiasts. Yes, our guest started off as a young child playing video games, and today is a principal systems designer of Old School RuneScape. So to find out what it takes to become a video game designer and developer, let's get Mod Arcane on the couch. Hello, Mod Arcane. Welcome to On the Couch. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you both.
Well, let's start off with the obvious question. You loved video games as a kid, didn't you? That's how the story began.
Yeah, so I think it's probably quite common for anyone in my generation to sit around playing video games for a decade, maybe two of your entire life. Occupies every waking hour, and I probably was no different than the average kid in that regards. And yeah, my parents definitely supported me in that regards. They definitely gave me the games that I kind of wanted, and so I was playing on the new consoles and things like that. And I even remember when my parents divorced when I was quite young, I ended up getting two Xboxes and two GameCubes, one for each house. Very spoiled in that regards. But that only furthered the kind of the addiction, right? Like playing more and more games and occupying most of my hobbying time. But yeah, so I definitely have been playing games for a very, very long time. I can't say I really expected to eventually get to this point where I'm working on games, but it definitely helps for sure.
It's every kid's dream, isn't it? That one day I love playing video games so much, I'm going to actually design and develop them. This is my career.
I think that is the norm, right? I think everyone loves the idea of being able to work on a video game at some point in their life. I don't think I actually personally had it as a dream growing up, and I don't think that's because I didn't want it. I think it's because it seems so fantastical that I didn't even consider it to be a reality. Like I didn't even think that I was never actually gunning to be work in video games when I was younger. I got into programming quite young when I was around 13. I started self-teaching myself a lot of programming, a lot of software development. And obviously it's very related and there's a lot of transferable skills there, but that kind of just seemed like the obvious thing to do, the realistic job, so to speak, of just getting programming. And I did end up getting a career in web development for a couple of years. So that's how I got into like the tech scene, so to speak. And it wasn't until a bit later that I started to consider the idea of, okay, what about if I actually worked in video games? Like I could use these programming skills somewhere else. And that's when I started applying and eventually ended up getting here.
That's really interesting, Mod Arcane, because when you were at school and you were developing and you were doing the computer programming, I think a lot of kids leave school not really appreciating what wonderful careers are open to them in the creative industries. Did anybody sit down and tell you in your career, careers chat that you have with your careers advisor that actually, oh, you're really good at computer programming, you could make a fortune in the gaming industry?
No, not in the slightest. I don't think I really had many productive discussions in like high school in that regards. It was all about just like college, right? It's like, oh, what do you like? What do you enjoy? What do you good at? This is the degree. But it was very rarely career focused. It's like, okay, what do these skills actually culminate into eventually? Like, what is like the end goal? It was always just like, what's the next step? So it wasn't until university where that ends up being the next step, right? Of like, okay, you're obviously going into a job next. But even then, they're kind of egging you on to do a master's because obviously they kind of want to keep for a bit longer. But eventually people obviously start thinking about what is the next job and things like that. But I wouldn't really say I got that much from my education in regards to like actual like career planning. It was kind of just learning stuff for the sake of learning stuff most of the time. And that's not to say the skills aren't useful or anything like that. I come to appreciate a lot of the things I learned back then, but it wasn't with a career in mind. And somewhat biased here, but I do see quite a lot of people go through college and university learning a lot of things without a career in mind and then don't end up getting a career because of that, right? You end up getting a degree that doesn't really lead anywhere, or it requires a PhD to go any further. And that leads to a lot of like frustration and resentment since you've got this massive debt and you don't have a job on the other end. So that is a bit of a tangent, sorry, but yeah.
Yeah, but I can understand that because my father read history at Oxford and landed up managing textile factories. So it had nothing to do with what he studied. What was your step-by-step educational path? What did you do?
So I obviously did high school like everyone's going to do, and then I took a BTech for computing. At this point, I already knew I was pretty good with computers. I've already been like self-teaching myself quite a lot at this point. And then I dropped out after a year. I found it really, really boring. The the course was very basic, as it probably should be, to be honest. But I was quite a lot further than what the course was really providing at that stage, so I got really bored. And as a young kid, quite arrogant, I was like, I'm gonna go do it all by myself. So then I took a year out and did a lot of self-teaching. I did a lot of programming, did a lot of personal projects, which I think was really useful. But eventually, my parents got a bit impatient and they were like, yeah, you kind of need to do something. We don't want you just sitting away in your room, just learning for the sake of learning. Eventually, it's got to culminate to something, right? So then they ended up pushing me to go back to college. I didn't want to do a BTech again. So I took A levels and I took maths, physics, electronics, and English. The English was a GCSE level English because I failed English at high school, so I had to re-get that. Not really my forte. But then I ended up dropping out of physics, way too hard for me, way too complicated. I did electronics just fine, and then I re-picked up computing in the second year as an AS level. So I only ended up with two A levels, one AS level, and then I retook English. So I wouldn't really say I came out of college with like a really good set of qualifications, but it was still 2 years of learning and improving yourself academically, adhering to deadlines, and just trying to learn right. So you still build up a lot of skills there that are still useful. But yeah, I didn't come out with like a really strong set of qualifications or anything. But it was good enough to get a degree. So then after that, I went to university and took a pretty generic software development degree and was there for 3 years, completed that, got a 2-1, and then eventually just started applying to jobs. So that was kind of like my education background. Um, yeah,
What kind of jobs were you going for?
kind of anything at that stage. I just came out of university. It was anything that would take me. You're obviously applying to everything you can. There's so many jobs to go for, and you're not really that picky as your first job in reality. So I applied for quite a lot of different ones. I think I got one offer that I declined because it didn't really fit the bill quite good enough. And then I got a job for a consulting company, and somewhat I was kind of a dumbass in reality. I didn't really read the contracts or the job description correctly enough. I got the job and I was really happy about it. It was a lot more money than I was expecting to. I think it was 23K back then, which was around 7K higher than the minimum wage. So I was like, I was really happy with that at that stage. And it turns out the job required you to move around the country and you didn't know where you're going to move to. So it kind of just demanded utmost flexibility of you. So I was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. That kind of terrified me. I didn't like the idea of moving away or anything like that, which is a bit ironic considering what happens in the future. But at that stage, it was a really, really scary. So, but I didn't want to turn it down. I got this really good at paying job. I accepted it. I didn't obviously want to tell my parents, my family, my friends that I'd like turned down the job and I was dumb and didn't read it. So I didn't want to admit that. So we stayed there and we ended up talking it out with the employer. And they actually said, like, okay, well, we could offer you a job here in Manchester as like one of the trainers. So obviously, I'm just out of university. It feels a bit ridiculous to ask someone straight out of university to train other people that are straight out of university. You don't really have much to stand on there. But that was kind of the idea. So I shadowed the other trainers for like 6 months or so, took in a lot of information, build up a skill set that I felt comfortable with to actually teach other people. And then I was there for around a year, 18 months, just teaching other people similar age as me, some a lot older because they were coming in from different programs. But the general idea was get these people that are educated but not necessarily qualified, get them a bit stronger, a bit more in the know, and then help them get a job. And then you'd ship them around the country to work at different parts of the country. So maybe they go down to London, and all these other countries, or all these other companies within the country. So that was the idea. So I worked there for around 18 months. And it was really useful. It really got me out of my shell because I was like very shy back then comparatively, and I didn't really do public speaking or anything like that. And being a trainer, I'm stood up in the front of a room like a teacher with a whiteboard telling everyone how to do things. It kind of forces you to get better at that. So I think it was really useful. But I don't think I ever would have applied for that if I knew what I was going into, to be honest. It was a bit of a shocker.
But
And
then
when
you did go, you yourself moved down to London, didn't you?
Yeah, so there's actually an extra step in there. So I worked there for 18 months and eventually got quite bored because I was teaching the same thing over and over again. I was teaching web programming over and over and over again. It just got a bit repetitive, a bit boring. And so I wanted something more. And I played a video game at the time called Battle Right. And I loved it. I was playing it all the time, absolutely obsessed with it. And then I ended up getting in a private Discord with the developers who made that game, and they were basically just asking for help balancing the game, play testing, getting feedback on the game, and obviously we end up just chatting, right? A conversation just occurs from there, and eventually they actually said like, oh well, we actually have a web development job coming up. Would you be interested in applying? Because as much as I'm a web developer and I would be doing web development for their company, it's really helpful for everyone in the company to understand the product, to have really played it a lot, because it can help out in a lot of different conversations, and it just smooths out conversation a lot of the time when people have the context. So that's a really big plus. Is like, as much as I might have been a pretty basic web developer back then, I knew the game a lot, which is a massive plus to actually getting in the industry. And it worked. I got the job, and this was in Sweden. So I got this job in Sweden at the time, and I was like, oh damn, I got to move, obviously pack up, quit my current job. So I did that. I moved country, which again, a bit hypocritical almost, that I was scared to move down to London or maybe just one town over on my original job. Now I'm moving across country into Sweden. So yeah, bit of a step, but I didn't want to let the opportunity go. I was getting into a gaming company, which is a really big thing that I wanted to do. But then also it was a really cool game, really good product, and I was getting into some more of an active development role. So I really wanted to do it. So I did it. And it was terrifying and it was a lot of work.
The
And I really
Swedes are
enjoyed working
very
there.
there are a lot of video game companies in Sweden, aren't
Yeah,
there?
there's quite a lot, especially in Stockholm. There's a bit of a hub, and it's definitely still growing. I was not actually in any of the major cities. I was in some really small town in the middle of Sweden, but it was really lovely. I really enjoyed my time there, and yeah, I worked there for around 2 years before eventually moving down to Cambridge near London, which is where I am now. So now I'm at Jagex working on Old School RuneScape, and I've been there for 5 years. So I finally found a place where I've stayed for longer than a couple of years.
And what is it about your current company that made you feel that was such a fit for you, and why you decided to stay? What was the thing that you thought, yeah, I'm home?
Love the game. It really is the product. And I remember there was actually one more step when I was in Sweden and before I was working at Jagex. I was looking for other jobs in Sweden, and I found a job. I got a job offer for a taxi company as a web developer for the taxi companies, and obviously not driving the taxis, but working on the website and like maybe the mobile apps and things like that to provide it. And it was really good. It was good money. It was everything like that. But I really wasn't interested in the product. Like I'm not passionate about taxi companies. Let's be real. If I'm honest, so that's why I really like where I am now. I love the product. I'm really passionate about the product, and that makes everything so much more interesting and meaningful. It makes my day to day just really exciting. I care about what I'm actually outputting at the end of the day. And whilst I think I would have that to some extent on any game if I like the genre and maybe it vibes with me to some degree, I think this game in particular is very, very special and has always been very special to me. I played this game when I was like a 13-year-old. Like it's a really long running game. It's over 20 years now. And I played it when I was a kid. So coming back and working on this game that I played when I was a kid, that really is the dream come true. Like it's not just working on any random game. It's working on like the game that I could have ever imagined. And still to this day, people ask me, like, is there any like game company out there or any game that you'd rather work on? And I still just don't think there is. Like, there's other games that I enjoy, but not to the level that I enjoy Old School RuneScape. And I don't think I would ever imagine another game coming across and really taking that from me. So yeah, I am really happy here. I can't imagine myself leaving, really. Um, there would have to be some really amazing game that captures me for a very long time for me to ever consider wanting to work somewhere else.
Well, for those of us or anybody out there who doesn't know the game that you are talking about, can you describe the game to us?
So, RuneScape is a game that's been around for 20 years. It was one of the first MMORPGs, which is like a massive role-playing game that loads of players can play with each other on. It was coming very much in the early days, like before World of Warcraft really popped off, which is another one of the really big MMOs that kind of popped off half a decade later or so. So it's been around for a very long time. It very much captured an audience very early on, but maybe does feel a bit dated at times. And it has had its like rocky history. It's had its peaks and lows. It's had really good updates and good years, and it's had really bad updates and bad years. And it has had some controversy over the years with like really bad updates that people have just not bought into at all. I currently work on a version of the game called Old School RuneScape, and the entire premise of that is it resurfaced what the game was like in 2007. So it launched around 13 or 15 years ago or so. So it's still been running around for quite a long time, but it almost like pivoted to an original version before a lot of the controversy happened. And it's basically a different timeline almost. We have two different games side by side, the more modern one and then the old school, more retro one. And I do think retro gaming is actually making quite a big resurgence these days. So it's a really big MMORPG. It's got a massive like class fantasy. Maybe you want to be a woodcutter or a miner. It's got combat if you're really into combat. It's got a big emphasis on socializing with a bunch of other players. But yeah, it's also taking this like very retro, old school approach, like visually and mechanically, that I think some players kind of appreciate, since a lot of the most modern games start to feel a bit bloated and they're weighed down with a lot of random stuff that people don't really care about. They're flooded with these things called microtransactions, which is like maybe you buy the game for £40 and then you need to spend an extra £10 and an extra £20 and an extra £30. And it starts to get quite exhausting when they bog you down with all this stuff. So we see Old School RuneScape as this like pure game. Like it's very original, it's very back to its roots, and it's very much focused on keeping it like that forever. And I think a lot of the players that play it really appreciate that. That it doesn't really feel like all the modern games that come out that maybe people don't really appreciate as much.
It's all about modern games are all about the money. And we had another chap on a while ago who's a game designer, and he talked about the dark gaming, didn't he, Julie? Like the dark art of dark gaming, where you are, that the games are designed to be addictive. They are designed to get you to spend more and more and more, and buy this add-on and this add-on and this upgrade and this upgrade. And it's a shame because children today are quite addicted to these games. I mean, my son, he's 11, but like a lot of his classmates, he is totally addicted to Roblox. Roblox is the thing. Minecraft, he fiddles about with every so often, but Roblox is the thing. And they're all on it. And some of the content on there is pretty awful, I have to say. These horror games and stuff, children who are like 6, 7, 8 who have got their access to should never be. I know they're supposed to have age restrictions, but it's so easy to get into these games. And I've had to do all sorts of shenanigans to try and block my son from accessing some of these games that content really is like 18 plus.
Mm-hmm. No, it's the internet in general has become a bit of an uncontained beast in that regard, right? And kids are getting better and better with technology as well, earlier and earlier, which lets them kind of abuse what the internet offers to an extent. And yeah, certain games obviously misadvertise. Certain games, yeah, like you said, it's like the dark side of it is they are almost like reprogramming your brains, or they are building up the games in a ways that they are addictive, and it's all about the money, right? They all have these like progression systems that encourage you to spend a lot of money and log in every day and everything else. And again, that's where RuneScape really comes in, and it's kind of like a light within the darkness of like we're not doing any of that really. Like it's addictive in its own right. I'm not going to say that RuneScape isn't addictive, but it tries to do addiction in like kind of a healthy way where you're just kind of enjoying the game and you want to progress your character, rather than like we're delving into your brain and really trying to make you log in every single day and just we put pop-ups in your face and everything of like buy this. Like we try and avoid all that because as much as they technically work, it's not really working in a healthy and productive way, and it does burn people out, it exhausts them, and generally hurts the enjoyment overall.
So, from a day-to-day perspective, you get up in the morning, you get dressed, and you go to work. Do you work from home? Do you work in an office? What do you do in your day?
Yeah, so that's actually sort of a funny story I could talk about where I applied to Jagex. I think it was March 29 or 2020, which is basically a month before the pandemic. So I went into the office, I did my interviews in the office, everything was hunky dory. And then a month later, the COVID pandemic happened, and obviously everything just goes into shutdown, right, across the entire world, including Jagex. I'm still in Sweden at this point. So for around 6 months, I'm remotely working for Jagex from Sweden. Which obviously was the first thing. I was the first COVID hire as well. So like they didn't really have a lot of the processes in place for properly onboarding people. So that was a bit messy. And then after around 6 months, I moved to Cambridge and was still working remotely since the pandemic was still kind of going on. It hadn't really subsided. And that was around maybe another 6 months or so before I could start going into the office again. I was very local at that time after I moved to Cambridge. So it was like a 15-minute walk or something to go to the office. Eventually got to the point where we were going in like once or twice a week or something like that, going into the office and seeing people. Now I've moved house quite a few times. I've moved a little bit further away, so commuting is a bit more awkward. And I think I try and at least do 1 day a week in the office. Some weeks I'll do two or three, depending on like who else is going in. Is there any extra reason? Maybe I've just not had any plans on the weekend, so I've been in all weekend as well. Maybe I'll make an extra effort to leave the house for an extra day, right? So yeah, maybe like 1 to 3 days a week. But generally, yeah, I'll come in. I've got my own office upstairs. I've got a separate room just for that. So I still have my separation between my home computer and my work computer, which I think is quite important for me. If I'm sat in the same room 16 hours a day, I go a bit stir crazy in reality. So having that separation is really nice. But yeah, then I try and commute into Cambridge once or twice a week, which is quite a nice walk, especially in this weather right now.
And do you develop the storylines? Do you develop the game out of sort of how it's progressing, or do you fix bugs and glitches, or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of everything in reality. So my title is technically systems designer, recently principal systems designer, which is just a level of responsibility. But systems designer is generally caring about the more intricate like progression systems that the player interacts with. So, for example, players might chop trees, which will give them some woodcutting XP that lets them chop trees faster. And they'll also get logs. That's a really basic system of player interacting with a tree, getting some resources, getting some XP. And we have much more complicated systems in the game and how they all tie into each other. Again, the game's 20 years old. It's massive. There's hundreds of systems that all interact with each other in complicated ways. And we need to kind of make that work, make that fit, make it feel appropriate. That's more so my responsibility. We have other people in the team that are narrative designers that care more about the stories and things like that. And so that'll be their specialization. We have technical designers that care about more of the technical implementation, making sure it's efficient code, it's written really well. And the more like we have like designers and we have the engine team as well. So technical designers kind of almost help them work together a bit more closely because they understand the underlying tech a bit better. So we have all these like sub-disciplines within it. So we're all game designers and we all do everything in reality. But within the sub-disciplines like narrative and systems, there's like extra specializations. There are things that you focus on, things that you're obviously good at, that you're encouraged to spend a bit more time on. So yeah, I
So
do a
how
lot
big
of
it,
the. Sorry, go on. I was going
sorry.
to talk about how another big thing that I work on is combat. So combat is just a giant system in the game, but it's a bit more nuanced than that. So I'll be creating bosses that have all mechanics and they have special rewards and special drops. That's something that I specialize in quite heavily. And I've done quite a lot of bosses over the years. I did send over a list of like all the different projects I've been working on, such as Araxor and soon to be released Yama. These big bosses that players will interact with, kill hundreds of times, get their loot, and then walk away onto the next grind.
What I find fascinating is that there is a whole team of human beings behind these games.
Yeah, for sure. So again, I'm a systems designer and I work with 15 or 16 other game designers. That's only the designer discipline in reality. Then we've got artists and there's subdisciplines within the artists. You have environment, character, animators, and then we'll have like the audio team that come in and do all the audio for absolutely everything. And that's there. And then we have a QA, so people who are actually just test our content and make sure it works properly and it's a good enough quality. And then they're only like the core dev teams. Then we have all the extra roles like production who will manage like the release dates and make sure everyone's working efficiently and on time and supporting the teams. Then you have like the web team that interacts with the websites and things like that. We have the creative services team that create like all of our like trailers and video promos and adverts, marketing and stuff. Like there's a lot of teams that all work on this game. Like the dev team's like one small part of it, but the entire company, like I think Jagex is 300 or 400 people or something like that. And we realistically are only working on like 2 or 3 games. We're updating the game every week, so there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, it's about the same as like people that work on a movie. You know, like one feature film takes like millions of people, and you see the credits that are going on for like 3 hours. Like, oh God. But what would your top tips be for anybody, you know, thinking about, I mean, you've had a very varied career and you've talked about your education. Anybody looking at this, young person looking at this, thinking, "Oh, that looks good." You know, I'm a computer into computer science, and I wouldn't mind getting into the gaming industry. What do you wish you had known? Have you got 3 top tips you might like to share about what maybe you to do differently, or advice you could give the next generation coming up to nail that first job in computer gaming?
I think so. For getting into the games industry as a whole, I think there's one big thing, which is don't specialize too early. I think this is something that people focus on quite a lot. And I think, unfortunately, university kind of encourages this like hyper tunnel vision focus as well. And people might want to be like a concept artist, or they might want to be specifically a game designer. Like they don't want to do any programming, they just want to do game design. And yeah, like concept art, they just want to do concept art. These are things you definitely can do, but the earlier you specialize, I find that it's harder to get into the industry. Generally, people really want generalists. They want people who can do a lot of things. Like if you can do concept art and animation and character art, even if you do those things worse than like someone who specializes, I think it's just going to increase your chances you get into that industry like tenfold. Like you're going to look so much more appealing. And for game designers as well, especially, if you're a game designer who can't program and doesn't have a lot of technical knowledge, you're just less attractive. As much as like there are roles out there that you will be able to just do game design and not program at all, I think it's a lot harder to get in the industry, get your foot in the door if that's all you can do. So I think that's one big thing I would probably recommend. And I think something that I've personally benefited from a lot is that I have quite a wide knowledge because I have trained people. That gave me a lot of social skills. I've done a lot of programming. That gave me a lot of technical skills. And I didn't really do a lot of game design, to be honest. Like I'm a principal system designer at a really big game. I didn't do any formal training in game design whatsoever. I just played the game an absolute load. I have a critical mind and I've played a lot of different games. I have a lot of different perspectives, but I have no official training in game design whatsoever. And maybe that's to my detriment sometimes, but it's hopefully not held me back so far. I think the game knowledge and understanding the product is way more valuable than like proper game design. And like this is how you're supposed to do things. I feel like people get bogged down a lot on like the right way, when in reality it's like do the way that works. In reality, it's a lot more flexible than that. So that'd be one thing. Don't try and specialize too early. Obviously, find what you enjoy, and you should obviously focus on that. If you really enjoy concept art and you hate animation, I'm not going to tell you to do something you really dislike just to get into it, but just keep your options open, keep a bit more of a wide net very early on. So that'd be one thing. I think the second thing, it's probably easier for me to say this than probably what to put into reality, but I think playing a lot of games is really useful. A lot of wide variety of games. Understand why those games work. Like don't just play them and just like mindlessly just do stuff. But like if you finish a game, go like, why did I enjoy that? What parts of that game did I actually enjoy? Just try and play them with a bit more of a critical mind. And but then equally, playing a specific game that you're then going to apply for is almost like a cheat code. Like it really is. Like if you like, say for example with RuneScape, I played RuneScape for like 3 years before I applied to the company. And I played it a lot in those 3 years. It really is a cheat code. Like they want you to understand the game, and it's a massive leg up than anyone else that doesn't understand the game. You could be the best programmer in the world. If you don't understand the game, Like personally, if I was hiring someone, I would rather have someone who is half as good as you but knew the game. I feel like that skill of understanding the game is so much more valuable than any like tech skill or art skill or whatever. Again, that's not to say that tech or being really good at your profession isn't useful, but it's really just highlighting how useful that game knowledge section really is to get working at a company. I think that's more so true with Old School RuneScape and where I am than most games because the game is gigantic. So not understanding the game is a massive disadvantage. If it's for like a brand new game that's being worked on from scratch, it probably matters a lot less, right? You're not going to be able to get that leg up. But equally, you're probably going to have to learn that product whilst you're there at the company as you're going. You're going to have to put that time and effort to learn it. Some games are just simpler to learn in reality. Call of Duty, for example, I'm not going to say it's a bad game by any merit or anything like that, but it's a much simpler game. It's a lot shallower. It has a very defined gameplay loop, and that's what you need to understand for RuneScape. There's hundreds of gameplay loops, hundreds of different ways to play the game, different players that play the game, much wider target audience. So it's a lot harder to do. It's a lot harder to pick that up quickly. Hence why knowing it beforehand is even more valuable. So if there is a game out there you really want to work on, and is it already out, and they're just updating it as time goes on, play it a lot, try and understand it, and really use that as advantage as a leg up in your interviews. I think it'd be a massive advantage. 3. I think what you said before about like what would you have really wished you knew earlier. I really wished that I don't know how to put it, but it feels like such a cop-out answer, but like communication and organization is the most invaluable skill that I've built up over the last 5 years. And I think it's made me excel tremendously in my role is just being actually able to be organized. Don't forget things, write things down, figure out how to actually communicate your ideas to people in a way that they'll actually understand. Because there's loads of different point of views in this world and different perspectives. Just because you think you have this really cool idea in your head and you think it's the best thing ever, if you just say it out loud of like how you would interpret it, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to understand it and understand where the value comes from and then also be sold that it's the best thing in the world. Like figuring out different ways of explaining things to different people and selling them all and also explaining exactly what certain disciplines need over others. Like I might not need to talk to an artist about all the really low level fundamental mechanical differences of how this works because he might just not need to know that in reality. They might need the bigger picture and they might need to know how narratively it fits in the world. And that's the value that comes to them. And that's the thing that I've been frustrated with myself a lot in the past is that I'll have a really good idea and I'll just communicate it to someone. They won't understand it and then I'll get frustrated at them. It's not their fault in reality. They have a different perspective. They have a different point of view. They have a much different set of knowledge than I do. And that's not necessarily wrong or anything either. It's just they have a different discipline. They're obviously a different person. And this isn't even really a game thing at this point. This applies to just life in general, right? Just in relationships and partners and everything. Like you need to understand how to communicate things in different ways that people understand. But me learning that has been at the job in reality and like figuring that stuff out. So if you're like a really shy person who like really doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to do any public speaking or anything like that, I completely get it. It's terrifying. It's also probably one of the most useful things you can build upon. I always got told that your driver's license is like one of the most useful qualifications you can ever have. And in a lot of cases, that's true because it just opens up opportunities. I think it's kind of the same with communication and organization is that it's just going to be so invaluable to everything you do. It's like a force multiplier on every single bit of value you actually have. It enhances all of it. And I'm still not perfect by any means, but it's definitely the thing that I find is the most valuable thing to get better at. Game design, I could try and get better at that day in, day out, and there's diminishing returns on how useful that can be because game design can often conflict with each other. You fix one thing, you break another. I don't think that really applies to organization and communication. I feel like you can only get better at that, and it only helps everything you do.
That is mind-blowing, what you've just said. That's fantastic. Because as you say, it applies to life in general.
100%.
Very, very, very sound pieces of advice that not only young budding game designers can learn from, but just everybody in general. Communication is really, really important. I advocate that a lot. But we have reached the point in our show now where we're going to dig a little bit more deeply into that beautifully big brain of yours. And we're going to ask you some creative, because we're creatives on the couch after all, we're going to ask you some creative questions about some values, and we're going to play with you the Values Jam game. So there's nothing to be afraid of. And this is just whatever pops, the first thing that pops into your head, even if you think, oh, that sounds a bit crazy, just say it. This is not a thing that you have to think about. We're going to ask you.
Don't think about it with your logical mind. As Melanie said, the first image that pops into your mind, just say it. One word, one sentence, just say what you see.
So I'm going to run my finger along the cards and you just say stop when you want me to pick a card. Stop. Right, top one. What have we got? Okay. You picked. Oh, this is quite a good one for your choice of game and for the length that you've been with your company. You have chosen the value of commitment. I think you're quite committed to your game, so I think that's quite a good card for you. So we're obviously going to ask you creatively about commitment. So what does commitment mean to you? If you could physically see it, what would it look like?
A golden retriever.
Oh, I like that. That's really cute. I like that. I like that a lot. If you could feel it, what would it feel like?
Love.
Nice one. Another good
or
answer.
hugging a golden retriever.
If it had a sound, what would it sound like?
I feel like I've just biased myself this golden retriever thing, but I can't just keep saying golden retriever.
A bark.
What do commitments sound like? Almost like passion, right? The passion in people's voice, like the people like they care, and that really comes across, especially in game design. I feel like you generally get more passionate people, especially about the game. So yeah, I'd probably say commitment really comes across in people's tone of voice about certain topics.
Nice. And if it had a smell, what would it smell like?
Such serious subjects, but I know it sounds like we're asking you to trivialize it, but let's see where this takes you.
I'm defaulting to food, but I'm trying to think what food would commitment sound like. I'm almost thinking like a nostalgic meal or something like that.
Baked beans on toast.
I probably would have given you that answer like 5 years ago because I used to make it so often, but I don't really make it that much anymore. My auntie makes a really good pasta dish, so I'd probably go with the smell of that.
And would it taste the same? Would it taste of that pasta dish, or would it have a different taste?
No, it tastes like a golden retriever.
I thought when we said what does it smell like, I thought you were going to say wet dog.
Right. Yeah.
Please tell me that you actually do have a golden retriever.
No, I don't have any pets at all.
Oh, you need to get out into the real world. You know, a dog would get you out into the real world.
Yeah, it would.
You've been absolutely wonderful. It's been lovely listening to you. You have such an amazingly interesting life, really, and it's been wonderful to listen to your take on the world. So thank you so much for joining us on the couch.
Thank you.
It has been delightful, and thank you everybody for tuning in. But until next time, we'll see you.